Hello, everybody. Lecture 4 is divided into two parts. Okay, the first part is transportation networks. We're going to discuss different aspects of transportation networks. And the second part of lecture 4 is security risks for transportation networks. We're going to learn how to quantify or evaluate security risks for transportation networks. Last year, when the class was in person, 1 week was used for the second part of lecture 4. One class to introduce the method, another one for exercises, because there will be graph ratings and also calculations. Similarly, I will also use a week to finish the second part, which is the next week. Okay, I will use some time to introduce the method and use several examples to address the method. And for the rest of the week, you can just create some graphs by yourself, graphs to show different transportation networks. Believe me, you will know how to do that. It's not that hard, and practice by yourself, because there will be one question at least about the evaluation of security risks in the first exam. Okay, so I will leave you enough time for practice, for question asking. But yeah, just rest assured that the method is not complex. Okay, so let's focus on the content of this week first, transportation networks. So let's just review the term network. Okay, it has multiple meanings, but in the context of transportation, it refers to the framework of routes within a system of locations identified as nodes, right? A route is a single link between two nodes that are part of a larger network that can refer to tangible routes such as roads and railroads, or less tangible ones such as air and sea corridors. So how did a transportation network emerge? Premeditated or the result of regional development? Which one would you think is the answer? I would say the later one, right? Rise of opportunities and investments within a specific region, and the more requirements for further development, which means that there should be a transportation network or transportation networks connecting different regions. Okay, let me just use the example I used in the first lecture to address this this answer to the question. So at the very beginning, we have city A, B, C, and D, say within this big region, right? Let's just assume city A and B, they produce raw materials, and city C and D, they have factories to process these raw materials, right? So at the beginning, we use blue links to connect 4 cities, and then we found out that this blue network is not that convenient because it's pure linear. You want to start from B and move materials from city B to city D. Then you have to go through city A and C. That's the reason why there is an opportunity to establish a central node, which is city E, right? To create another network, which is network green, or green network here, right? So obviously this network is more flexible with the emerging of city E as the central node of this new network, right? E has nothing to do with raw materials, has nothing to do with factories, right? It is responsible for the logistics, right? For business, for office parks. So this region, this huge region, can be connected to other 2 small regions, right? And within each region, the logic stays the same. There should be a central node to represent the region, or connecting other related cities or nodes. right? In this region, we have city F, another region, city G. So we just established another network because it's a requirement of development, economic development of these three regions, right? So here we have a new network, the yellow one, to connecting central hubs or say central nodes of these three regions. So you can see here, it's so the motivation here is the development of different cities, of different regions. So capital is always behind this, right? People need jobs, people need to earn money, right? And the regional development needs business, right? So we use transportation networks to connect people, to connect goods, to connect cities and regions. That's the reason why there. That's the reason why of the emerging of transportation networks. Okay, so this is a very general review for the concept of transportation networks, for nodes, for the reason why there is the emerging of transportation networks. Okay, so now we're going to address, like I mentioned before, different aspects of transportation networks. What are those aspects? First one, the effectiveness of a transportation network, and then the structure of transportation networks, and then accessibility, connectivity, efficiency, and topology. Okay, they are what we're going to discuss this week. Okay, so let's get started. First aspect here is the effectiveness of a transportation network. Okay, what is effectiveness? So before that, let me introduce Metcalfes Law. Robert Metcalfe, do you know him? He is a pioneer of the internet we're using today. He helped establish the internet, or say he helped invent the internet. So of course, this law was proposed by this engineer, very famous engineer. The content of this law is that the effect of a telecommunications network is proportion to the square of the number of connected users of the system. Let's just say there are n users in this specific telecommunication network. Then what? Then the effectiveness of this network is proportional to n squared. And let's just say we have two users here, right? Two cell phones. So the square of 2 is 4. So you can simply use 4 without any unit to address the effectiveness of this network, right? So obviously, it's not that powerful. It's not that effective currently for this very simple communication network connecting only 2 users. So if we just find more users, we found more users, we promoted our product, which is the cell phone, right? Not the cell phone, not necessarily cell phone, let's say the telephone. And more users are using this network. So this network has become more complex. Now we have 5 users. According to this law, currently the effectiveness of this new network is the square of 5, which is 25. It's more powerful, it's more effective than the original, very simple one. And if you develop your business, you attract more and more users to use your telecommunication services. Then we have this very complex telecommunication network, which has 12 users. So the square of 12 is 144. So if you compare the original network and the latest network, the effectiveness used to be 4 and now is 144. which means that if you want to increase the effectiveness of a telecommunication network, you need to just add more and more users into your network and connect them. So you would say this is about telecommunication network. How is is this related to effectiveness of a transportation network? I mean, a telecommunication network is very specific. A transportation network is very specific, right? One is for communication, another is for moving goods and people. But if you just ignore the appearance of these two types of network, they are both networks, right? Behind the appearance of them, the purpose of them is to connect things, right? Users or nodes. So if we translate this law, Metcalfes law, and apply it to transportation networks, it would be that the value or effectiveness of a transportation network instead of a telecommunication network is proportional to the square of connected nodes instead of users. So you can consider each node here as a user of telecommunication network, right? So complex networks are exponentially more valuable than simple networks. Why is it exponentially more valuable? Because we use n squared instead of simply n to address the effectiveness of a network. So it's exponentially more valuable. So if you only have 2 users, the result is 4. If you have 3 users, the result is not 6, it's 9, right? So there is a power here, right? Power function here because it's n squared, right? So here, let's just finish this paragraph. Are exponentially more valuable than simple networks since they offer numerous options in connecting locations. And here, MOMOs leads to what? Higher effectiveness. And here, let's talk about the structure of a transportation network. Okay, after effectiveness, because in summary, in order to address effectiveness of transportation networks, you can simply use the number of nodes to address that. Okay, structure is more complex. So typically we have 3 types for structure of a transportation network. It could be a centralized network, it could be a decentralized network, or it is something called distributed network. Okay, so for centralized network, center is dominant and has the highest accessibility. Hub and spoke network. That's just another name for centralized network, hub and spoke. So you can say here, the importance of different nodes here is different. The central node here is more important than rest nodes because the central node connects all other nodes. And for the rest nodes, their importance is the same because they are not connected to each other. They all connect to the central hub or the central node here, which is the hub of the system of the network, right? So the advantage of the centralized network is the low cost because you don't have to build a very complex network. You only have to establish links between each node and the central node. Compared to other types, its cost is low. It's highly centralized. What's the disadvantage here? So what's the disadvantage? It's very obvious that the central hub, the central node is more important than others. So if you were a terrorist, which node do you want to attack? Of course, the central node. Because if the central node is not working, the whole network here is paralyzed. So the resilience of this network is very weak. Okay, it costs the least, but it's not that resilient. If the central one, the most important node here, does not work very well, then the whole network, all other nodes, they are all affected by the malfunction of the central node. Okay, so then we have decentralized network. A center is still the hub with the highest accessibility, but the network is structured that sub-centers also have high accessibility. So this is a graph to show you the structure of a decentralized network. From the name, you know that the designer of this network doesn't want a node to be the very center of the network. Instead of that, there are multiple centers, right? So in the very middle of this network, we still have the most important node, which is the center of the network, of course, central hub of the network. It is still important than the rest nodes. But there are other, say, lower level centers, right? This one, and this one. You can consider them as the hubs for different regions. And the very center one, the very central hub of this whole network is, say, the national hub, right? Connecting different regional hubs. So the advantage of this network is its resilience is at least better than the first one, right? There are multiple centers here. Of course, if you attack the very central hub of this network, the damage is still high. But at least you did not put all stake on one hub, on one node. Even the central one is not working very well, is not functional. Regional centers, regional hubs, they can still serve as regional hubs, obviously, and there could be a replacement, temporary replacement for the national or the very center of the network, but at least it's better than the first one, the centralized network. So here you are actually you averaged the risk. You average the risk to 1, 2, 3, 4 hubs instead of putting all stake on this one single hub. That's decentralized network. That's the second type of structure of transportation networks. The third one is even more distributed. I mean, the importance of nodes is distributed. That's the reason why it's simply called distributed network. No significant difference of accessibility is found among all nodes, which leads to a strong connectivity, but also redundancy. You can count the number of links in this network and compare the number of links with the number of links from the first network. Obviously, you need to use more money. You need to build more infrastructures for this network because it's much more complex than decentralized and centralized network. But the advantage here is that although there is still a central hub, you can see that the rest nodes, they are evenly connected to surrounding nodes. Of course, using more links, which means more investments. It makes sense because if you want this network to be very stable, to be very resilient, and no matter which node is attacked, the damage is not that hard. The damage is not that big in terms of the whole network. Then distributed network is what you want. But there is also redundancy. Some links, they are simply not necessary, right? For example, you want to connect this node with the central node, right? And of course, you can simply just connect them using one link. If you can do this, I mean, using one link to connect them, why do you need to just go to the third city, go to the third node, and arrive at the central node, right? Sometimes it's just not, maybe it's not necessary, okay? So the structure of transportation networks, we have three types of them, okay? Centralized, decentralized, and distributed. They have their pros and cons, okay? And you should know these pros and cons, okay? We're not transportation network designers here, but in order to address transportation security, this basic knowledge should be known, okay? Structure. So next, let's talk about accessibility. So we actually touched a little bit about accessibility here, right? Accessibility, and accessibility. So now let's talk about it. Accessibility refers to how many nodes each node is connected to. Okay, so here we have two other types of structure here, more specific structure. So the first one is called centrifugal. Another one is called centripetal. Okay, centrifugal and centripetal. The first one, centrifugal structure here, if you compare it to these three very typical types of networks, which one is it? Centralized, decentralized, or distributed? I would say somewhere between decentralized and distributed. Okay, and how is the accessibility of all those nodes in this network? It's actually good, right? Because the central node here obviously is more important than others. It connects to 1, 2, 3, 4, 4 neighbor nodes. And for rest nodes, some of them, for example, this one, this one, this one, and this one. These four, they're connecting to 3 neighbors, and all the rest nodes at corners, they are connected to 2 neighbors. So I would say the accessibility here for nodes, they are the accessibility is okay, is good. And if we're talking about the traffic flows within this system, right? It's just this pattern, right? From center to surrounding areas. So traffic flows, they are evenly distributed along all these links. We also have another extreme, say, structure here. It's called centripetal. Okay, so this is a typical centralized network, right? All nodes, they are connected to the central node, which is the hub of the network. So how about the accessibility here? The hub of the network has the highest accessibility because it is connected to all rest nodes. And for the rest, for other nodes, they have the same accessibility because each one of them is only connected to the central node, not to any other nodes. Which means that this central node has the highest priority, has the highest accessibility. Okay, all goods need to move to the center. Then maybe they can go to other regions, right? The central node here is the most important one, okay? And between centrifugal and the centripetal networks, there could be just a normal Euro transportation network here. And again, if you want to evaluate the accessibility of a node, you can just simply count how many nodes are connected to this node of interest. Okay, that's accessibility. So for centrifugal network, no advantage given to specific locations, right? I would say more advantage is still given to the central node, right? But for centripetal favors some locations. I would say specifically this whole network favors only one node, which is the central node of the network. Next aspect, connectivity. So nodes are directly or indirectly connected. Okay, if nodes are directly connected, then we say that the connectivity of them is good. Otherwise, it's the connectivity is low or not good, right? So here, from strong connectivity to weak connectivity, here is a point-to-point network. On the left side, we have 4 nodes. On the right side, we have other 4 nodes. And you can see that we have 2 groups of nodes, right? And within each group, each node is connected to all nodes in another group. For example, this node is connected to all 4 nodes in another group. Similarly, for the second node in the first group, a third node, fourth node in the first group. So similarly, all nodes in the second group, they are all connected to all nodes in the first group. So we have another extreme example here. It's the centralized network or hub and spoke network. The connectivity here is extremely weak because all nodes in the first group are indirectly connected to all other nodes in the second group. So there is no direct connection between any two nodes from 2 groups. They're all connected by a hub or a central node. Okay, so this hub and spoke network has the weakest connectivity. On the other hand, the point-to-point network has the strongest connectivity because all nodes from 2 groups, they are directly connected to each other. Okay, so we have 2 extremes here. Usually in our daily life, in the real world, the transportation system, one transportation network, should be somewhere between these 2 extremes, because the pros and cons are also extreme for them. But in real world, there is always compromise, right? So because here we're doing something called education. So I will just show you extremes, okay? And for this point-to-point network, direct connections between nodes, which means connectivity is very strong, right? This network is strong against interruptions, of course, right? Because all those nodes from 2 groups, they're directly connected to each other. Even one or some of them are not working, the network is still well, is not very seriously affected, which means for point-to-point network, the resilience is very strong. But the disadvantage is that there are too many links, which leads to higher management costs. Not only management cost, all cost is high because you need to invest all these links. Each one is made of what? Is made of resources and money. Money is one of resources, right? So each one each link here consumes resources. It's expensive, so it's actually not necessary in real world when you're actually trying to design a transportation network. This is simply not necessary. How about the second one? It's not perfect either, right? We have a centripetal structure with potential to develop a destruction, to develop a distribution system connecting more hubs, right? Lower cost due to the shared hub. You don't have to just establish links to exhaust all pairs of nodes from group 1 and group 2. You simply have to create a hub and connect this hub to all other nodes, right? Lower cost due to the shared hub, but vulnerable to interruptions at hub. If the hub here is not working very well, the whole network is affected because it's so important. It's the center, right? It is connecting all other nodes. So yeah, like I mentioned before, we have two extreme examples here. They have extreme advantages and extreme disadvantages. That's the reason why they are not practical in real world, okay? So more frequently used today, especially in aviation transportation, okay? So a hub and spoke network, it has its disadvantages, but still, this one is from the textbook, but I would say that it's just still not very practical in real world, even for aviation systems. Okay, so for example, this hub is New York, right? If you want to fly from China to Europe, of course, you can just use New York as a hub. You fly from Beijing, maybe, or Shanghai to New York, and New York is also connected to London, Paris, and maybe Madrid, right? Right. So if we're looking at this aviation transportation network at a global level, it is a hub and spoke network. But I would say that even we're looking at this global scale network, there are still multiple hubs. One hub is just not practical because New York is only one option, right? You can fly to Boston from China. You can fly to San Francisco from China, and then start from San Francisco or Boston. You can fly to London, Paris, or Madrid. So at least there should be multiple hubs instead of one hub. This is just too extreme. Okay, that's all I want to say. And next, let's talk about efficiency. Let's talk about efficiency. So it refers to the ability to support flows where operating conditions meet performance criteria. Okay, so there are two factors that impact efficiency. The first factor is revenue and costs. The second one is resilience. Okay, so let's go through the first factor here, using an example. Okay, so firstly, let's just say we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nodes here in this very simple transportation system. And for each node, there is a specific figure showing you the revenue you can get by connecting that node to other nodes, or say by adding that node into your transportation system. Okay, so each figure here is revenue. So let's just say for now we have one link connecting two nodes, and the cost of this very simple system, which is only one link, is 10. The revenue is what? Is the sum of 10 and 5. So what? 15, right? So what's the benefit? Benefit is the difference between revenue and cost. Revenue is something you earn, cost is something you invested, right? So the difference of them is benefit. So for now, we have a benefit of 5. Okay, revenue is 15, cost is 10. So we want to improve the benefit because the purpose of any business is benefit. You want to earn money. So if we add another node into the system is more complex than the original one because now we have 2 links. So the cost increased from 10 to 12. Also, the revenue increased from 15 to 5 plus 3 plus 10, which is 18. So good, congratulations. Your benefit also increased from 5 to 6, which is a good thing. Right? So you say, okay, since this is a good thing, let's just include more and more nodes. Let's just, nodes. Let's just add more and more nodes into the system. I know that the cost will increase, but the revenue will also increase. As a result, the benefit will also increase. That's your assumption, but it's not always right. Let's just follow this logic first. So now I want more benefit, so I added another node into the system. Now we have 4 nodes in the system. The cost, as we expected, increased, of course, because you have to create more links from 12 to 14. Okay, an increase of 2 units. The revenue also increased a lot from 18 to 25, which is an increase of 7. So good. For the as a result, your benefit still increased from 6 to 11. Okay, so far the logic is still working. What logic? Adding more nodes into the system brings higher benefit. Okay, let's just say, let's do it. Let's just add the last node into the system. So now we have this still simple linear transportation system connecting all nodes. Now the cost increased from 14 to 19. Revenue did not increase that much, only from 25 to 29. So as a result, your benefit actually decreased from 11 to 10. So this is not something you wanted, right? Because by adding one last node into the system, your benefit actually decreased. So the efficiency, specifically economic efficiency of this transportation network, is not very well now for scenario D compared to scenario C, B, and A. So what's the best scenario here? Obviously, it's scenario C, right? The highest benefit can be earned. And if you just follow this logic to just add the last node into the transportation system, the benefit will simply drop. Okay, so this is economic efficiency of your transportation network. You have to consider that, right? So another example here, point-to-point total cost. Let's just use those 2 groups again. But this time, group 1 has 5 nodes, another group has 5 nodes, right? So if you are establishing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 links to connect 5 pairs of nodes from 2 groups, then for each link, you have to say invest $3,000. Let's assume it's very cheap, right? For $3,000 for a road. So totally, you need to invest what? $15,000, right? So let's just say that's the cost. On the other hand, if you do this, you make one node from group 1 a hub of that group. You made another node in group 2 as the hub of group 2, right? Now you simply need to establish a relatively more expensive link between these two hubs and just establish more cheaper links between each node and the hub of that group. Then you have a new hub and spoke network here. The cost is much lower than the point-to-point network, from 15,000 to 5,850. Right? You would say why why are those links between nodes within a group is cheaper than the link between two hubs? Consider group 1 as China. Consider group 2 as United States. And this green area is Pacific Ocean. Now I don't think I need to explain, right? So if you just try to build a road between one city of China to say Beijing or to Shanghai, obviously it's cheaper. It's a domestic construction, and it's simply maybe just asphalt road. Similarly for United States. But if you want to connect Shanghai and say San Francisco or Shanghai and Los Angeles, of course, it's much money to invest to establish this international link because the distance is longer and it's international construction, right? No matter airline or a transportation corridor, oceanic transportation corridor, it's much more expensive than domestic links, right? So you can say that in terms of economic efficiency, hub and spoke network is more practical, is better. Okay, just create some hubs for different regions and connect those hubs to regional nodes, and then connect hubs with inter-regional links. Okay, so that's a better idea. That's a better idea. So the second factor, resilience. We always have to consider if something is going wrong within the network. How to deal with that? What's the resilience of the system, of the network? Okay, so resilience, ability to support disruptions while maintaining a level of service and connectivity. Okay, talking about resilience, hub and spoke network is what? Is very weak. The efficiency is very high, right? The efficiency, especially economic efficiency, is very high, but the resilience is very low. Okay, establish least links and make full use of them. Of course, efficiency is high in terms of money, of economy. Weak against disruptions at the center, right? I mentioned this multiple times in this lecture. You just need to just make sure that the central hub is damaged, then the whole network is paralyzed. On the other hand, if you create this resilient network, connecting each node to as many other nodes as possible, which is costly, but the stake is averaged among all nodes. Although the central one is still more important than others, but even the central one is not functioning well. The network can still work. I mean, because at least all 4 other nodes, they're connected to each other. So it's stronger against disruptions at nodes compared to this center and compared to this hub and spoke network. Okay, I'll just stop here and finish this week's part of the lecture using another video. Okay, I will see you in the next video.